Trust, a fragile, life-shaping gift. 17-year-old Bernadette Walker learned this the hard way when she confided in someone she believed would protect her only to be met with betrayal. But the nightmare didn't end there. The very next day, on July 18, 2020, she vanished without a trace. This is not just a story about a missing girl. It's a case that forces us to question the very people we trust the most. Because when Bernadette needed her family the most, they turned their backs on her. Lies, manipulation, and secrets would soon unravel, exposing a truth darker than anyone could have imagined. What happened to Bernadette? Why did her parents delay reporting her disappearance? And most chilling of all was this tragedy orchestrated by the very people meant to protect her. Young girl whose voice was silenced, but whose story demands to be told. Born on December 13, 2002, in Peterborough, England, Bernadette Walker, affectionately known as Bea, was a quiet yet vibrant soul. Though she was shy around strangers, those who knew her saw a lively, artistic young woman with a deep passion for photography. Always carrying her camera, Bea had dreams of making it big in the world of visual storytelling. Despite her reserved nature, Bea had a strong online presence, preferring to connect with friends through social media. She also had a close bond with her grandmother, who taught her how to ignite an activity that became a source of comfort and creativity. Bea's aspirations stretched far beyond her hometown. She often spoke of moving to the United States after finishing her studies at Peterborough College, where she was pursuing photography. But behind this promising future lay a troubling reality. Bea's home life was anything but stable. Her mother, Sarah Louise Walker, had a history of failed relationships, leaving her to raise multiple children on her own. Life in the Walker household was chaotic, with 10 children crammed into a 5-bedroom home. And at the center of it all was Scott Walker, who would become the architect of Bea's worst nightmare. Scott Walker was not Bernadette's biological father, but she called him Dad from a young age. Her mother Sarah had met Scott after splitting from Bea's real father. At first, their relationship seemed normal, even promising, but Scott was far from the loving stepfather he pretended to be. Before meeting Sarah, Scott had been married to a woman named Jill. Their marriage, however, was anything but happy. Jill later revealed that Scott was controlling, obsessive, and emotionally abusive. Though he never physically harmed her, his words carried a sinister weight, leaving her trapped in a cycle of fear. When Jill finally escaped, Scott wasted no time moving on to Sarah. Unlike Jill, Sarah seemed willing to overlook Scott's flaws. She embraced their relationship wholeheartedly, even changing all her children's last names to Walker despite not being legally married to him. Together, they had 4 more children, adding to Sarah's already large family. The Walker home became a suffocating environment of control and surveillance. Scott installed cameras throughout the house, even in the bathroom. His excuse? He claimed he wanted to catch Bea hiding candy. But as the events unfolded, it became clear that his motives were far more sinister. Life inside the Walker household was a nightmare hidden behind closed doors. Scott had a reputation for being a strict and overbearing father figure. But according to Bea's older brother, Anthony, his influence went beyond discipline. It was full-scale abuse. Anthony later revealed that Scott was both physically and verbally abusive, exerting total dominance over the family. He was known to cheat on Sarah multiple times, yet she never left him. Instead, she chose to look the other way, dismissing any signs of trouble. Scott's behavior took an even darker turn when he installed security cameras in nearly every room. His reasoning? He claimed it was to monitor the children's behavior, but when the cameras extended to the family bathroom, it was clear that Scott's intentions were far from protective. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, Bea tried to hold on to her dreams. She sought solace in her photography, capturing moments that reflected the beauty she longed for in life. But little did she know, the very man she called Dad was about to take everything away from her. One tragic decision, one terrible secret, and one unthinkable betrayal would lead to Bea's disappearance, never to be seen again. By the summer of 2020, things were beginning to shift. Sarah and Scott's relationship had finally ended, and Sarah had begun seeing a new man named Chris O'Connell. But in an odd twist, Scott still lived in the family home, maintaining control over Sarah's life. Despite their separation, Scott made rules for Sarah's new relationship. He dictated when she could see Chris and forbade him from visiting the house. Sarah, as always, complied. But while this strange arrangement played out, something far more horrifying was unfolding. Bea had been carrying a secret tone too painful to bear alone. And in July 2020, she finally found the courage to reveal it. She confided in her mother that Scott had been abusing her for years. But instead of receiving comfort, Bea was met with a shocking response. Sarah didn't believe her. Worse yet, she accused her daughter of lying. Bea had trusted her mother to protect her, only to be betrayed in the cruelest way imaginable. And then, just days later, Bea was gone. The question remained: did Sarah's disbelief seal Bea's fate? On the night of July 17, 2020, Scott drove Bea to his parents' home in Warrington. She was dressed in all black, wearing her signature thick-framed glasses and a denim jacket. Scott, for reasons unknown, took her phone away. At his parents' house, Bea was visibly upset, but no one asked why. She went to bed around 1 a.m., unaware that it would be the last night anyone would see her alive. The next morning, at 10:25 a.m., Scott picked her up to take her home. But according to him, Bea never made it back. Scott claimed that as they drove through Skaters Way, Bea suddenly flung open the car door and ran off. He insisted that he chased after her, but couldn't catch up. So, he simply went home. If this story already sounds suspicious, that's because it was. And when Sarah saw Scott return, exhausted and on the verge of tears, she barely reacted. More shocking than Bea's disappearance was the fact that her own mother didn't report her missing until 3 days later. 3 whole days. Why the delay? What really happened in those crucial hours? The answers were darker than anyone could have imagined. The disappearance of Bernadette Walker was troubling enough, but the behavior of her parents made it even more disturbing. Sarah Walker waited 3 entire days before reporting her 17-year-old daughter missing. When she finally called the police, her explanation was baffling. She claimed Bea had texted her, saying she was staying with her ex-boyfriend Luke, but the police found it strange that neither Sarah nor Scott attempted to visit Luke's house or contact him directly. Investigators immediately sensed something was off. If a teenager vanishes, a parent's first instinct is to panic, not to sit back and wait. Yet Sarah showed no urgency. Meanwhile, detectives searched areas around Peterborough, including Gunthorpe and Newborough. They also began combing through Sarah and Scott's phone records, hoping to find a clue. What they uncovered would blow the case wide open. Scott's phone was mysteriously switched off for nearly 91 minutes on the day Bea went missing. During this time, he was completely untraceable. Even more suspicious, in the following days, both Scott and Sarah made repeated trips to a specific locationer lock-up garage owned by Scott's parents. What were they hiding? The truth was about to take a horrifying turn. The police wasted no time investigating the garage in Walton that Scott and Sarah had visited multiple times after Bea disappeared. It was clear something had drawn them back there, but what? When officers arrived, they didn't find Bea, but they did find something just as shocking: her backpack. Inside the bag was a diary, and in that diary, a heartbreaking entry revealed Bea's deepest pain. "Told my mum about my dad and the abuse. She called me a liar and threatened to kill me if I told the police." These words painted a tragic picture. Bea had finally gathered the courage to speak out, only to be silenced by her own mother. Police also reached out to Bea's friends. One of them, Warren Naylor, revealed something chilling: had received an Instagram message from Bea on July 19th, a day after she supposedly ran away. The message claimed she had lied about Scott's abuse. But there was one huge problem: Bea didn't have access to her phone. Scott had taken it from her before she vanished. So, if Bea wasn't sending those messages, who was? Investigators had a theory, and it would change everything. With growing suspicions, investigators closely analyzed the messages sent from Bea's phone. The conclusion? They weren't written by her at all. The texts to Warren, Sarah, and Bea's friends were a desperate attempt to make it seem like she had run away. But the police quickly saw through the deception. Sarah admitted to sending the text herself, pretending to be Bea. But why would a mother do such a thing? It became horrifyingly clear. Sarah and Scott were covering something up. Detectives believed that after Bea accused Scott of abuse, he realized his secret was in danger of being exposed. He couldn't allow that to happen. They suspected that Scott killed Bea on the way home from his parents' house during the mysterious 91-minute window when his phone was off. Afterward, His first call was to Sarah. It lasted 9 minutes. Did he tell her what he had done? Was this the moment they began planning the cover-up? Sarah and Scott thought they could outsmart the police, but their lies were unraveling fast. And soon, their web of deception would collapse entirely. As detectives dug deeper, Scott and Sarah's erratic behavior only made them look more guilty. Scott continued to insist that Bea had simply run away. But if that were true, why had his phone been switched off for nearly an hour and a half? Why did he visit the garage multiple times after Bea disappeared? And why was Sarah so calm about her daughter's absence? Investigators were convinced they had enough to make an arrest. On September 14, 2020, 2 months after Bea's disappearance, Scott and Sarah Walker were taken into custody. Scott was charged with murder. Sarah was charged with perverting the course of justice. But there was still one major problem. Bea's body was nowhere to be found. Without physical evidence, could they prove Scott had killed her? The answer lay in the overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence, from the diary entry to the phone records. And as more details emerged, the case against Scott and Sarah became undeniable. They had underestimated the police. They had underestimated the truth. And now, they would finally face the consequences. As the trial approached, the weight of their crimes caught up with Scott and Sarah. Sarah cracked, admitting guilt, but denying knowledge of her daughter's fate. Protecting Scott or fearing truth? A strong case built. Rage, murder, and a cover-up.